Jack McKenney from the National Sports Media Association here. And today I'm with James Fegan. Mr. Fegan, congratulations on your award. Tell us a little bit about what it means to you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Um, what does it mean to me? I don't know. I think you do this. I never thought I would get any sort of award or recognition. I can't say like I thought it's nice. At a certain point, especially going on a couple of years in the industry, you kind of have to find validation in just kind of trust in what you're doing is legitimate, or trust in your work, or trust in your process. It's kind of like, it's not like sports. You can't say like I hit 300 and thus that proves I'm good, whether or not people recognize me or not. It's very subjective about who's doing a good job, or who's doing things the right way. And there's a lot of different opinions about what's an ethical approach and what's work is really valuable. Is it all just like stuff that you're proud of, or stuff that's achieving civic goals as far as writing, or is it about getting scoops, or what gets people's attention or page views? So it's really hard to pin down like what is valuable. So I felt like I had to reach a point of feeling a lot of trust, or taking validations about what I do on my own, to where like any kind of getting popular or famous, or just getting a small award is not part of the process. But obviously it's very touching to, and I think it was probably most rewarding to be able to like, tell people like my mother, or my sister, or my family members who are outside of the industry, and aren't necessarily plugged into what I think is like a valuable story or not, to have them be able to say like, all right, well, James is clearly committed to this, and he's seen some results, or he's seen getting some recognition by his peers. It's a way to validate to them what I'm doing, or make them feel like there's some reward to them being able to support me. Obviously, not making a lot of money for very long stretches of time, to see this. I think calling my mom and telling her that I got this was probably the best part of it, more than I don't think you can live and die on whether or not you're getting awards personally. So I think for my family is probably where it was most meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point you make. I mean, first off, with writing, like you said, it was a wonderful analogy. I mean, you hit 300, you're hitting 20 homers, you're a good player. But, you can't really do that in sports writing. Like, okay, since the Dodgers are doing really well and I'm writing about the Dodgers, does that mean I'm doing a good job? Like, not necessarily, just hypothetically there. So that's a great point. And two, like, I can totally relate to that as well. Like, you know, my mom has no idea what I'm writing about when I'm writing these scripts. But when you earn an award like this, she knows that you're doing well. And after all the support your family's given you, I'm sure it's great for them to know, that's a lot of validation that you're doing a great job and you're having a lot of success.
Yeah, hopefully. I cynically, I think probably my, you talk about the Dodgers doing well. I think I probably got a lot of attention, or maybe more than I did in previous years, because the White Sox are more in the news, and a lot of it with like everyone kind of being, oh my God, they hired Tony La Russa, and wanting to see how that worked. And, being someone who is in the position of asking questions all the time, or maybe getting into disagreements, maybe got me more attention than I would have just reporting on kind of a more low key team than in years past. So you don't want to ride the wave too much of last year was so much better than anything else I was doing, rather than just like, well, this is just a reason to keep sticking with my process.
hmm Yeah, and you make a great point. Let's talk a little bit about the White Sox, right? Obviously, you covered the team when they were a little more low key and not as great. And then, you're kind of there for the Renaissance when, they get Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Moncada, Michael Kopech. They signed Grandal. They signed Liam Hendricks. Tons of money poured into this team. And now they're one of the best teams in the American League. And that was a quick transition. How do you feel about it, and what's it like writing for this team now?
I mean, it didn't seem very quick for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other night, like Michael Kopech He threw 5 scoreless innings. I think um, if I looked it up, he's probably got less than like 10 career major league starts at this point, or something low like that. Very much like the nascent beginning of his career. Um, I've known Michael for over 5 years. I've interviewed both, or not, just his father, his high school coach. I've been to where he grew up. Similar thing for like Lucas Giolito, but maybe he's considered like a younger player, or Tim Anderson's kind of like just coming into his own. But like, these are all guys like I covered for a very long time at this point, and I feel like I've gotten to know. Like, someone like Zach Collins got traded from the White Sox to the Blue Jays like the other week, and if you look at his career, you probably think of like someone who hasn't really gotten an extended opportunity in the major leagues for any period of time. But I've known him since I started in February 2017 and covered him for so long. Like, it was a big like relationship to offload that he was going away. Like, I sent him this very long message about how much I appreciated like covering him, and all the him kind of dealing with all the times I had to criticize him, or all the times I had to talk about things he was working on. Like, it's been a very long gradual buildup to see everything get to this point, because I was around to cover it at very much like its root beginnings so much. People who had really small roles, like Dane Dunning was just the guy they wound up training for Lance Lynn, but I covered Dane Dunning and interviewed him like over 20 times. I covered him for several years. To be kind of keyed into all these like small pieces of what's now created, it's kind of very surreal, and it's a little calming, I think. Definitely like the first time covering like game 1 of the ALDS, I had never been to like covering a playoff game, and seeing like the atmosphere is a little bit overwhelming. And I was sitting next to our Astros writer, who's been covering the Astros since before the Athletics started, and he casually said like it'd been at least 50 playoff games for him. Like, he was very used to this, to the point where like it's hard for him to care about regular season games, because like obviously these are so much more intense and need so much more. But it's kind of calming how long I've been around it, knowing that like I think if I was just some new reporter, like being airdropped in and trying to figure out like, well, what do I have unique to say, or what can I like story angle can I come up with about like this popular team. Whereas for me, it's all about drawing from like stuff I've picked up along the way. Like, I feel like a frequent device I try to use is recalling conversations or the roots of conversations with players and coaches from years ago, because you see them all play at work now. So I really try to ground covering this team now with covering it 4 or 5 years ago, of seeing it kind of slowly build up. Obviously, not everything's come to fruition. Obviously, a lot of things have happened that I didn't expect. I certainly didn't expect Tony La Russa to be part of this process at any point. But you try to draw back on like kind of the words that were said at the origins of this process, because that also helps you grade it at the end of, they made very clear what their ambitions were 4 or 5 years ago, and so you can hold it up to now and say like, well, how has it measured up? In some ways it has, in some ways it hasn't.
So let's shift gears a bit here. Tell us a little bit of just how you got your passion for writing, how you got into this business, and how you worked for the position you have now.
As far as like writing, my father's an English teacher. He was very into literature throughout. We crammed a lot for like all my little vocabulary quizzes in high school, which I think most people found as like a nuisance, but I really I've always liked expanding my vocabulary. I think just being interested in writing and feeling a lot of comfort and confidence in it is something that I've had since grade school. It always felt like something where I could kind of flourish and do my own thing, and I've always felt like an innate understanding of writing's rules and the ability to kind of play around with it that you have when you know the rules well. But as far as getting in the industry, I think even coming out of college, I thought I'd be more in comedy writing. I was even taking classes for it when I got out of undergrad, and I felt like, the story I tell is that I felt like I was not doing my comedy writing homework because I was watching White Sox games, and thought like, well, how do I blend like these two activities to save time? And I felt like I brought a lot of like trying to be witty to my initial like sports blogging and whatnot. The more I got into it, the more I felt like my jokes kind of fell flat if I didn't really know what I was talking about. And the way to really know what you're talking about is to ask people who know what they're talking about questions, and find out from them. That kind of led me towards saying 3 years after I graduated from college that I wanted to go to journalism school and really get the tools to kind of be good at this. And, the more I did that and more I did actual like kind of meat and potatoes reporting to really like talk to people and get understanding with it. I think that maybe got more of I really got more into learning about the game as much as possible, and using the whole reporting and covering a team as a launching point to be able to talk to people about questions that interest me or things that interest me about the sport, and kind of learn more about it, more than I became obsessed with like making the snarky comment, which is obviously still very much in my writing all the time. But I feel like I just got really, this was a tool that got me closer and closer to a sport that I loved. And so writing about it, getting any opportunities to cover it and be closer to it and find out about it is what kind of led me to wanting to do sports writing, beat writing, because it feels like those are the people who get to ask questions and figure out new things every single day about the sport they're covering, the team they're covering. So I interned with like NBC Sports Chicago when I was getting my master's in journalism at DePaul. That allowed me to cover some Sox stuff and Cubs stuff. I filled in as like a freelancer at times. I did 3 years after grad school. I got a job as an assignment editor at a TV news station in South Bend, which didn't probably lead directly to sports writing, but got me a lot of like experience of kind of how journalism is done on a very local level, and how kind of sausage is made, and how you set up stuff, and how you kind of keep an eye out for where stories are developing. And I kept kind of writing and blogging on the side throughout that to put myself in a position where when a startup came along, I had like friends in the writing industry who were like, hey, if you need a Sox writer and you're trying to give like a new guy a shot, which is code for they're trying to hire someone on the cheap. James is a guy who's been writing about the Sox a long time. He's kind of ready to take the next step. And my friend Saadav Sharma was the person who said that to The Athletic, because he was working as their Cubs writer, and that's how I got on here.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a great connection to have. And now you're writing for the Sox, going from fan-sided to The Athletic, which is an awesome transition for sure. What's your advice to young professionals like me who are trying to get into this business? What's one piece of advice you would give, something valuable?
I was just asked this earlier today. I don't know, because like obviously like the way to get started in 2010 is probably different than 2022. I can't point you to a startup to try to get the attention of like quite like The Athletic that had like such a broad national focus at the time. And if anything, I'd probably expect The Athletic to shrink a bit more in the future than expand. But the things that I emphasized were I was trying to be active as possible. I was trying to like always have like, I wanted to write for sites that had bigger platforms. That's how I initially like wound up being at Fanside for a little bit, was that they had me like writing there once a week. And I thought like, well, that'd be another place for me to go to. But I always kind of maintained like a steady site that I was writing for every day, so that like I could kind of point like, look, I'm working, like, look, I can keep up with a regular daily pace. Because that's at least what I was taught at the time of blogging, is that you had to have very updated regular work to build an audience. That like if you're just writing once a week, or when it kind of felt like you wanted to do something, like it'd be a lot harder to get kind of steady attention than kind of developing like the repetition with readers that like James is going to have something up on the Sox, pretty much every single day. And when I initially focused on like a team that I was going to write about, like one, I wanted to commit to a team. And two, I just kind of wanted to find a niche. Like, I love basketball, I love football at the time, but I thought like White Sox baseball, even more than like even Cubs baseball. I grew up a White Sox fan, but like, that was part of the calculation, was that this was a smaller
Mhm.
media environment. Maybe there'd be more of a niche to do. Like, there's some guy named like Jeff Cohen in Charlotte who just like covers the Charlotte Knights, and that's a really small niche in terms of White Sox fans who want to know what's going on at the AAA affiliate and want to know if like who's ready to come up, or if someone's hurt, or what prospects are working on. But like, that's definitely a niche that was like not filled. So like, that struck me. I don't know if that's going to launch into the next platform, but that struck me as like, huh, that's right, that most minor league teams do not have like dedicated beat writers now. They have like the major league beat writers who are like kind of stretched trying to keep track of what's going on with something like me. Um, that's kind of a niche to like get people to like pay attention to a little bit. So that was something that I was conscious of just like not trying to be another person, um, writing about be one of like 500 people blogging about the Bears. So certainly if you brought something really unique to it, like you were really good at breaking down film, or you were just, extremely funny, though, as someone who's trying to be extremely funny in the past, I think you're wise to never assume you're the funniest person writing about something. I was just really conscious of trying to find a niche of some way, and not just think that like I'll be so funny and so clever in my writing that I'll overpower everything else. And every lame networking mixer that I could go to, I went to for a long period of time. I definitely don't like to do that as much anymore, now that I feel like I have a stable job and can support my wife, and we can live in our own place. But definitely at the time when I was trying to break through, I thought like, I'm not above any of these things. I should try to like make allies or just get my name out some way I can, because opportunities are really hard to find. It's really hard to like blind apply to places and have them pick you to be the person that they have for this position. Some way that you can find where people think that can get to know you, and thus, you're somewhat of a reliable ID on their mind of someone who could do this before they're trying to think of how to fill a job, before they're seeing your resume for the first time. It's always helpful.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for coming on today. And once again, congratulations on your.
Thank you. I appreciate it.